Hello there and welcome to this Astranti video where we will be going through the survey results that we received from students who sat the May 2021 exam sitting for trainer. Now this is the first exam sitting for this pre-scene company and the next management case study exam sitting for this pre-scene, so the trainer pre-scene, will be due in August 2021. So consider using any information you find here to help you prepare for the next exam, whether it be for the August sitting or for the next pre-scene sitting in November. Now, the first bit of information we're going to go over from the survey results is the exam difficulty, and I have some insight to give you regarding this. So, starting off, it's good to see there's a near 50-50 split in difficulty. Obviously, it'd be better if the majority of students found it to be as expected or easier, but 50-50 is better than the February 2021 exam sitting, which was for PriBlocks. Now, PriBlocks was the previous pre-scene company, and the February sitting was the second sitting for that pre-scene company. So what can we say about it? Well, unfortunately, we can't see if there's a trend right now. What I can say is that the first exam sitting for PriBlocks was roughly like this. It was generally a lot easier, that one, because PriBlocks was a manufacturing company, whereas Trainer is a service company. And service companies can be a little bit more difficult to write about just because they're services. They're not as easy to visualize in your head as manufacturing companies are. So there may be a few factors at play as to why PriBlocks was found easier, but the second sitting for PriBlocks was considerably more difficult. So, while I can't say until after the August sitting as to whether that will be a trend, it's worth bearing in mind that there is the thinnest possibility that the second sitting for the case study may be more difficult when it comes to the management case study. But I wouldn't rely on that necessarily just yet, as we still don't know, obviously, what the August sitting will be. So it's worth bearing in mind that overall, the exam is as expected. There may be some difficulty, which we'll get onto in a second, but overall, it seems that students went in with what they expected. The one thing that seemed to crop up in responses, though, was that there was difficulty in understanding the questions. Some questions had really awkward wording, or at least some of the variants did. Not necessarily all variants, but some did have awkward wording to them. Now, ideally, the questions should be as clear as day. There should be very little ambiguity in them, but there are circumstances in which the CIMA exam questions can be a little bit niche. They can be a little bit mean in what they're trying to assess you on. So just bear that in mind. We try to accommodate that nicheness in our own mocks, but it's sometimes obviously very difficult to get that level of specificity correct when it comes to the CIMA case study exam. So just bear that in mind, that you may get asked some very awkward questions. Now, what would students like to have done more of? Well, we can see that quite plainly, obviously revision of theory, mock exams, and then a split between time management and answer planning. So what can I say about this? Well, revision of theory has actually been gaining some steam as of late. The last few exam sittings, revision of theory has been one of the top areas that people would prefer to spend more time on. It seems to be a growing trend where theory seems to be important when it comes to the questions, albeit I will say that it's also quite possible that the reason some students may feel that theory is, they wish they'd spent more on the theory, is because perhaps in the exam they got a question which naturally tested their theoretical knowledge a bit and they couldn't quite answer it as competently or as comprehensively as they would have liked. Does that mean you should put all your eggs in one basket? You should go straight for a revision of theory and focus on that? I would advise you not to. It's important you do understand the theory, but I also saw many responses in the survey results saying that the exam was quite practical as well. So while the revision of theory will get you so far, it's important you do understand the practical element, and the practical element comes across in the mock exams the most, as that is where you're going to be assessed on your practical application of theoretical knowledge. So the two go hand in hand. You need theoretical knowledge to back up how you would implement it in practice, but it's also important you understand how you would actually implement that very theory in practice as well. So balance the two carefully. As for time management and answer planning, yeah, that's to be expected. The exams are 45 minutes per task, and that can be quite difficult to manage. So by planning your answer, you can hopefully manage your time better. So the two go hand in hand in that respect. As for students which they've done less of, this is actually quite interesting because we've never seen the mock exam practice have 0% before. Usually some percentage of students feel they should have spent less time on the mocks, but it's interesting there's actually 0% this time. So clearly the mocks this time round were viewed as being incredibly helpful. In contrast, the industry research stroke analysis has been perceived as less useful, and by the majority of students it's been perceived as less useful. Now, overall, I would have to in some respect agree with students in that you shouldn't be spending a lot of your time on the industry research. It's there so that you have some broader context for the industry as a whole. Now, in some respect, in this pre-scene, it's a little bit different because trainers pre-scene also had quite a decent amount of industry analysis already in the pre-scene. Usually the pre-scenes, or at least previous pre-scenes, haven't come with quite as much industry knowledge, but the trainer one did this time. So a lot of the industry research was already in the pre-scene. So what you would really want out of the industry analysis are the business environment examples, which you might find useful in the exam if you can find a way to implement them into your exam answers. But as the majority of students here are pointing out, it would have been better if they spent more of their time maybe looking at marks, at theory, or perhaps even maybe a bit of the pre-scene, perhaps, as opposed to focusing too much on the industry analysis. You really just want to get maybe a few token examples from there. And if you're interested in the wider industry, if you feel it would help, I really wouldn't spend too long on it. Revision of theory is interesting because it contrasts with what we saw in the previous slide where many students felt that they should have revised more in theory. So it's worth knowing that maybe these are the students that felt that they were already very comfortable with certain theoretical models, certain approaches, certain theoretical principles or financial standards, and as a result they didn't find the revision of theory as important. So obviously this is much more of a subjective situation. If you feel you need to revise from theory, if you're a gateway student, for example, as we'll get onto in a second, it's recommended you actually spend a good chunk of your time actually revising the theory, because you will be going into the exam without that build-up of knowledge that other CIMA students will have had by doing F1, E1, and P1. So there is a case for revising theory, and there's a case for not revising as much theory. It's really a case of how comfortable you are as a person with what you understand and how comfortable you are answering the questions. And then lastly, pre-scene analysis. Yeah, generally speaking, you want to try and get it to a point where you can memorize the pre-scene, or at least be able to know where in the pre-scene certain information is if you need to call upon it. So we're not saying memorize the whole of the financial statement. We're saying memorize maybe token figures or even just percentages, say margins, as opposed to memorizing the actual financial figures, or memorizing who is in charge of the company, what is their value proposition, what kinds of courses they have. Just commit that bit of information to your memory, so that way then you don't have to go through it in the exam and waste precious minutes trying to find that little bit of information from the pre-scene analysis. So while it's recommended you do spend some time on the pre-scene analysis, and it's important you do to establish that baseline, read it, analyze it, go through the pre-scene analysis if you have the time, but then start thinking around the pre-scene almost immediately. So to finish off the video, we're going to just go through some tips of what to give future students. So the majority of students, as you might expect, said to sit mock exams. They felt the mock exams were by and far the most helpful aspect of the course. They felt that the mock exams were key to their successful revision. Because what you got to remember is that mock exams aren't just a way of assessing how fast you can do the exam. They're also a way of you trying to revise information. Because if you're trying to apply it, that is in one respect helping you remember it better for come the exam day. Then there's gateway students. Something that I've been seeing more and more of this year is gateway students joining onto the management case study course. And I've spoken with many gateway students, and I have the same sort of response, and that's that if you are a gateway student, start revising the F2, P2, and E2 topics now. Especially if you are sitting the November sitting coming up, I would strongly recommend that you begin revising the core topics right now before the pre-scene releases. So that way then you have basically that entire period of time to work on the pre-scene, as opposed to revising for content that you would have ideally known prior to the case study through past studies. Because you're in a position where you're just going straight to the case study exam, you need that extra window of time to really get to grips with the topics found in F2, P2, and E2. And then this is actually from the previous survey, but I felt it was a very good point and worth keeping in mind. And that's that you should answer questions with a, if it were your own business, what would you do? Remember, you are role-playing a financial manager, and in that respect, you are trying to assist the senior managers and the executives of the company to move the business in the right direction. So if you are able to empathize with this train of thought, empathize with the idea that if you were in this position, if this was your business, if Trainer was your company, how would you approach this problem? That might help you answer questions in a way that you feel more confident, in a way that you feel is more comprehensive and competent, and therefore more likely to wow the examiner. Now, while I've got your attention at the end of this video, I'd like to make you aware of the other products that Astranti sell as part of the case study course. So the first of these is a series of study text and tuition videos, and these come in two flavors. You have our written study text if you prefer learning through reading, or you can watch our videos if you're more of a visual learner. Now to start with, we have an exam technique study series, which breaks down how to succeed at various case study levels. We'll be looking at exam technique, writing style, and planning that you need to nail to be successful in your case study exams. And to accompany this, we also have a revision series dedicated to the theory side of things. This is because at the case study level, there is a large amount of theory you need to be capable of using in your case study exam. So what we've done here is we've taken the key areas of the theory from the 3 case study levels and condensed them into a series of chapters to help focus your revision. Moving away from the more generic products and onto the products that are specific to the case study pre-scene, the first of these is the pre-scene analysis video series. First and foremost, this contains a series of videos where we break down the relevant pre-scene at the appropriate level of the qualification, page by page. And throughout this video, we bring out all the key points that could be relevant for you in your exam, looking at various topics and things you might need to consider when revising for the case study. And then to supplement the pre-scene analysis, we also have 2 videos. We have the strategic analysis where we give a broad overview of what kind of strategy the pre-scene company is using and where it might be going in the future. And then we also look at the top 10 issues that we think this pre-scene company might be subject to and something that you may need to take into consideration when revising for the case study. We then provide an industry analysis document and accompanying video. CIMA like to see you demonstrate wider industry knowledge in your exam, and this is what this industry analysis does, as it gives you the wider industry knowledge you need in order to fulfill this requirement. Essentially what it is, it's a large document that we've compiled on all the relevant industry information that we have gathered so that you don't have to do the revision yourself. And then to accompany this, we of course have a video that goes over this document to pick out some of the key points for you if you prefer that. We also produce a number of mock exams for every sitting. We write 5 mock exams for the first exam sitting, and then we add 2 more supplementary mocks for the second exam sitting. We design these mocks around the specific issues relevant to the pre-scene and make them as close to the real thing as you will see in the case study exam as possible. So these are a great way to practice your exam technique and test your knowledge of the pre-scene company under timed conditions. And then to add value to this product, we also offer a marking and feedback service. So we have a range of highly skilled finance professionals working as freelance staff for us, and it is these staff that provide the marking and feedback service. So this is a great service to use in conjunction with our mock exams, as it gives you a great idea of how you're progressing in the areas you need to work on for your case study exam. And then if you're in need of extra exam practice, we also provide a more generic question pack product. So obviously there are only so many questions you could write about on a specific pre-scene. So what this question pack is a series of generic questions on generic scenarios that we come up with at Astranti, whereby we look to test specific topics that come up regularly in the case study exam. So if there is a particular topic you are struggling with and we've only tested once in our mocks, and you'd like more practice on it, then these question packs will be a great product for you to turn to. The penultimate product on this list is a product for those of you who would like to get a full overriding picture in terms of your revision all at once, and these are our masterclasses. So these are our expert tutors who hold 2 masterclasses every exam sitting, and these essentially cover all key aspects that you're going to need to know for your relevant exams. So from particular theories to analyses of the pre-scene, all the way through to tips and tricks you can use in your exam. And finally, such is the confidence we have in the quality of our product that if you do purchase a full course from us and you unfortunately do not pass your exam using our product, then we will offer what we call a pass guarantee. So if you did not pass your exam after purchasing our full course, then you will receive the materials for the next exam sitting free of charge. Okay, thank you very much for listening to that. I hope you find our products useful, and of course I would like to wish you the best of luck in your exam from everyone at Astranti.